Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back for another weekly conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Lizzy O'Donnell to celebrate their debut picture book, The Day Belle Found Her Sound. And while this may be their first picture book, there's a beautiful career and backstory in illustration that I'm hoping we'll dive into today. Lizzy, welcome to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I always love talking to a new to me author.
Yeah.
I especially love talking to debut authors because there's just a special level of excitement there. But I'm also excited because this episode is releasing the day before your book birthday, which is it's just a wonderful, wonderful time. So listeners, you know that my episodes typically go live on Fridays, but because we are square in the summer reading season, I have bonus episodes throughout the summer to keep our reading life really, really strong. And so we're lucky because this episode is right before the book birthday of the book we are talking about today. So yeah, congratulations on that debut.
Thank you so much.
Such a good feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're here to talk all about that picture book, The Day Belle Found Her Sound. But first, since likely you'll be new to some listeners who are listening, I would love for you to start with you and give us a little background about you, your work, your beautiful illustration, all the things that led to write today with a book birthday tomorrow.
Okay. I'm listening. No. Yeah, I started my career. I decided I wanted to go to school for illustration. Um, like right. It was like after junior year. I went to a pre-college program at my alma mater, the University of the Arts in Philly, which just recently closed. But we'll talk about it later. Um, and I went there. I met some amazing people, and I just like fell in love with the place, and I fell in love with illustration, and just like all the things that like I could do with that. Like I feel like I was really looking for a way to tell a story without writing it first. I always like drawing pictures, and I wanted them to like tell a story in a way that like wasn't just like a like fine art or something. Like it kind of expanded my worldview in terms of like what art could be. And so I went there for illustration. I had a wonderful time with like the people I met, both students and faculty. My professors were amazing. And around my like sophomore year, I was pretty into like comics and stuff. I really was like, I'm gonna do that. And I was very into indie comics. But my proclivities were more towards like doing things that were very like sweet and like just very positive thoughts. And like not that there isn't room for that in the comics, but I wasn't really finding my like home there yet. Like I just didn't know where I fit in that. And format wise, I just gravitated more towards children's books. And it wasn't until I did a summer internship with Greg Pizzoli, where him and I are very close now, and he is the best. And he basically like made me want to be a children's book illustrator. I always say like Christian Patchell, who was my teacher, in pre-college. He was like, who made me want to be an illustrator? And then Greg is who like I made me want to be a children's book illustrator. Him and Tom Leonard, who is also incredible, and like Bob Bird, I also had. He's done so many amazing books. So yeah, there's just so many like children's book people that just like it just confirmed to me like, okay, this is the thing that I like
Yeah.
really want to do. This is like the world I love living in and that I'm probably the most inspired by in terms of my work. Um, so yeah, throughout college, through the rest of college, I pretty much was laser focused on that. Obviously, we had assignments outside of that. But my thesis was a children's book. And I brought that to SCBWI, the portfolio review in New York, right after I graduated. And that's where I met Molly O'Neill, who's my agent, and she rules. And yeah, she's helped me develop my ideas, which kind of stemmed from my thesis book, and now it's morphed and changed into Belle. And it took years because that was in 2018. So like now the book is coming out. It's 2024. Finally, this idea is just like out. So it's nice.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of where I've been since college in terms of children's books. It took me a while to um, like there was a lot of different ideas and a lot of like different modes and like um iterations of this idea that I played with, or like even just like different book ideas that like I stuck with for a while, and then like I realized too late like this isn't working. So it was a lot of trial and error, and yeah, luckily we finally landed here. I actually met up with Molly right before lockdown. I met up with her. She was here for, I believe, the ALA convention, like the Library Association. Um, she was in Philly, and we met up, and I had made a postcard of Belle and the goose character in the book, and for like the new year and stuff. And she was like, "What about this?" Because like the idea of it, I was like playing with for a while was so complicated at that point. It was so like I had put so much weight into it, and it just was like not not it. And so that was in 2020, and then Belle was a little bit more solidified then, and uh, yeah, here we are.
I love that because that's what I am, learning about the creative process, and I'm learning from all the authors and the illustrators that I've gotten to talk with on this podcast that they're these little ideas, and sometimes you go with them and sometimes you don't, but sometimes this idea that you choose leads you to that idea. And then more than once I've heard an author and an illustrator say, someone has said, well,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
what about that? And that's the thing. That's the thing that ends up being the thing. I love the way
right.
it all plays out because that's where you were supposed to end up, right here.
Yeah, like I really needed, I always need like someone to just pull me out of like when I'm just so laser focused on something. And I've had this with students too. Like I've had like I've worked with I was working with a senior in SVA's MFA program on her thesis, and like she was so focused on something, and then I was looking at the rest of her work and I was like, this is what you like doing. Why aren't you doing that? And like it
Yeah.
just like it always felt so hypocritical to me because I also need someone telling me that.
Yeah.
But that's just, I mean, that's how it is. You know, you get so laser focused on something that you don't see the forest through the trees, basically.
Yeah,
Uh,
and sometimes I think when you love it and it's the thing that comes naturally, sometimes you're like, wait, that could be my thing. That
right.
that could be the thing that like is just fun and I'm playing around with to get my mind off the other thing I should be working on.
Yeah.
I find that a lot. You with illustration, but with me, I am definitely on the writing side. I can draw stick
Sure.
people, Lizzie, that's it. And that happens a lot too. Like the writing the pieces that come naturally, I think, well, that can't be it. Could it? Could
Yeah.
that be it? So I'm so glad that you let that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. um, yeah, it's uh yeah, you can get so focused on like thinking you want to do something and what you think it should look like and everything. And um I don't know. Obviously, people are more enticed by the things that you're injecting positive energy into, and that they
Right.
can tell you enjoy making, than the
That's a
things that
great
you did
point.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least for
You can
me.
feel it. That's such,
Even if I mean, even if you're like working through like a negative feeling or something, like if you can tell at least it like a catharsis came out of that, it's a lot more. It's a lot more like, you know, at least for me, pleasant to take in. Yeah,
yeah.
than something that just kind of makes you sit in the sadness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's relatable. It's real. It's that connection, right? It's that connection
Yeah,
readers that we're looking for. And like you said, when you can feel the energy, right? That transaction
yeah,
between the author and the reader and on the page. And it's just this magical thing that happens. And, however you get there was how you were supposed to get there.
yeah, totally. I have to remind myself of that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's hard. I mean, like you can get so I don't know. You can get so I mean, like we were talking before, you can get so like focused on where you are right now as opposed to just like uh reflecting on like what got you there and like how far you've come and like that's not
Yeah.
worth discounting at all with anything.
Yeah, I used to have this suitcase when I was a little girl. I'm really dating myself, but it was a yellow Care Bear suitcase. Although Care Bears became popular again, so maybe I'm not
Yeah,
dating myself quite so
yeah.
much. But it was a yellow Care Bear suitcase that said half the fun is getting there. And it's like such
Oh,
a reminder, right? That it's the process as well as that outcome at the end.
yeah, that's kind of what my next book is about, actually.
Oh, good. You can give us a sneak peek to that in the end. I'm glad that that little segue is there.
Yeah.
So the process is awesome, but technically we are here to talk about the product. We are here to talk primarily about the debut picture book, The Day Belle Found Her Sound. Oh, it's beautiful. This is when I wish we were on YouTube instead of a
Right.
podcast. There is something about that color scheme
Oh,
that you
thank
have
you.
chosen that is, and I'll talk about my reaction in a minute, but it's very inviting, it's very calming, it's very grounding. It got an emotional reaction out of me for sure. So later I'm going to pick your brain about how exactly why you chose those colors and how you did it. But first, for listeners who don't know the book, they didn't know it was coming. Tell us a little bit about it in your own words.
Sure. So Belle is a little mouse who is loves music but just doesn't know how to join in with the song that's happening in her town. So she tries every instrument she can find in her house. She tries mimicking the people in her town. Um, she tries being as loud as possible, and none of them really feel like her. And yeah, in the book, she realizes all that and figures out what her sound is.
Which I
Spoiler
love
alert,
you
it's her
didn't give
voice.
a spoiler. Right.
Yeah.
Right. We won't tell the whole story of what that is so that readers
Yeah.
want to listen. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful on the inside in the words. It's gorgeous on the outside with the pictures. I've got to tell you, when I read your book, I got emotional because when I was a little girl, there was, and maybe it's the right name, maybe it's not, but I remember there was this greeting card magazine. And they're not as popular now, I'm sure, but there was I think it was called Current, and it was a greeting card magazine, and my grandmother used to get it. It used to come to her house, and I used to flip through the pages because I just adored looking at greeting cards. I had grand visions of like creating them when I was an adult. And every magazine, you got one free card, like in the middle that you could pull out. And I remember getting this magazine and this one card. I adored this one card. It was a card that kind of signified what I wanted my life to look like when I grew up. It was a it was a set of bunnies instead of the animals in yours, but there was a set of bunnies, and there were bunnies that were baking cookies. There were bunnies that were making things, bunnies playing board games, it was a very busy, oversized kitchen
Yeah.
with all of these bunnies and all of this action and all of this connection and love and goodness. And I remember opening up and going, that is what, like, that's what I want my future life to look like, my home to look like. I want it busy and I want it a little bit messy, and it's fun,
Yes.
wonderful. And I held on to that card for a long time because I used to just like to open it up and look at it. Like everybody makes Pinterest vision boards now.
Yeah.
I had my greeting card that I used to
You
look
had a physical Pinterest.
like. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what I did with that card over time. I ended up losing the card, but it's still emblazoned in my memory.
Oh, I'm an eBay fiend. You're gonna get that in the mail like after
Okay,
this
good. I will I
from
will give
me.
you the details of
You're
what that
fine.
is a little bit later. But when I opened your book for the first time and I went specifically to that second page, that first like double page spread, I
Yeah.
just stopped. And I got emotional. I got a little teary because Lizzy, that was the essence of that card, that life, that vision that I had had. And I thought, oh my gosh, how did they do this? Like that was the card. So instantly I opened this book. I saw that beautiful, busy, you know, busy but loving and connected and noisy and just this wonderful opening. Like I just wanted to dive into that first page. It's so welcoming.
Oh,
It is so very welcoming. I thought, I don't need my card. I don't need my card anymore. Although I do want you to find it if you can.
I will. Oh, I'm on a mission.
But I've got to tell you, it's gorgeous. Like
Thank
all
you.
of the feelings, like community, connection, love, family, friendship, peace, belonging. It was all there on that page. And then it just kept coming page after page after page. And I don't know how you did it. You conveyed such beautiful emotion. It's listeners, it's gorgeous. You have to see it. This is a podcast, but you have to see the pictures. And
I
I'm
need
not
to talk to you
talking
every
about the
day.
story yet. I'm just talking about the first page. It's gorgeous. How did you do it? How did you imagine that opening spread like that to invite readers into this world?
Um, wow. Thank
Loaded
you for all
question, I
that.
know.
No, this was lovely. I mean, I interrupted you by saying that like I need you here all the time to just like hype me up. Um, I've always really wanted to do like a dollhouse, like a cut in the middle, uh, like
Yeah.
illustration. I just like I've tried them before, just like in my own like you know tests and in school and stuff, and um, I wanted to see how that would play out like on a 2 page spread, and um, because I was going through her day, I figured like, okay, I have to design an apartment for her, basically. So like, um, I split it up into like a grid, like a 4 block grid. Um, basically had it act like a comic. But like each grid is each block is a room of her house. And yeah, I actually built like a little. I'll show it to you if I can find it. But I made like a fold out paper version of her house
Oh,
just
that
to
is so
really like
cool.
because I just like wasn't sure like what the geography of the house was gonna be like how I wanted it to go from uh her like chill out space to the kitchen to her bedroom to her
Yeah.
like reading nook. Um so I built that in my sketchbook. Um like it folds out. Because I just needed to see it in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, that page actually threw the voice out of all of them. So I'm really glad that you like it.
I did.
Um,
It paid
it
off.
took me forever because that was also a page that I was really working through what the rest of the style of the book was going to be.
Right.
Because I figured it had a bunch of elements in there that could help inform everything else. So I was like, I'm going to spend a lot of time on this and spent way more than I needed to. But yeah, I'm glad that it paid off.
It
But
did.
yeah, I and also I started having fun with like picking out and making items out of littler items. Like there's this book, Local Likes. It's kind of like I Spy, that I oh, my dogs are playing now. Um, there's this book called Local Likes. It's which is kind of like I Spy, where like every scene is made out of like little stuff. Um, like there's a whole like amusement park made out of like pencils and like
Oh,
uh
cool.
yeah, like a tape measure is like the roller coaster or something like that. They use crackers for the walls and like playing cards. Anyway, I was having a lot of fun with like, figuring out what Belle could use for her house and like mixing that with just like real world stuff or like, actual pieces of furniture. Because I figured this world is kind of like her apartment doesn't just have mice in it. She just has like the smaller room in a house in an apartment complex with like
Yeah.
a bunch of different size rooms. So like I had to kind of figure that out. Anyway, um, also she lives on like the top floor and she has that like little tiny window. So like her house is about the size of that top window, is what my thought was. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a lot of like kind of architecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got very mathematical. But yeah, it was fun to design that page a lot. It was a lot of work, but um, yeah.
It was my favorite. It was
Oh, I'm so
my
glad.
favorite. Yeah. I need to, take a picture of it so that I can pop it onto the bulletin board, or you need to make stickers. You need to do something.
I'll send you a print of it. Yeah.
It's it's gorgeous. And as you said, it does set the stage for not just the rest of the story, or not just the rest of the illustrations, but the story as well. It's about a community. There are a lot of different I'll say characters to meet, and musical instruments to try, and things to work through. And it's just it's a really great beginning to show kind of where Belle's coming from. We see where she goes,
Right.
and then it loops back. And I'm not giving spoilers, but it does loop back in a really beautiful way. As
Yeah, I just wanted to like introduce people to like her everyday life and kind of
yeah,
her solitude in the midst of all this like craziness going on outside and her yearning to join that, stuff like that. But yeah, having a little introduction to her.
yeah, yeah, and you know, we may be human, and Belle may be a mouse,
Yeah.
but what I loved was the relatability, right? We all can figure out at least one time in our lives, if not many, where we weren't quite sure we belonged. We weren't sure
Mhm.
where we belonged, how we fit, what was our thing. And you try, and then you try, and then you try, and then maybe you give up, right? And then you kind of keep trying. What I loved was that readers, I imagine, can find themselves on that page somewhere in Belle's story. And again, not without giving away the ending, but there is this wonderful lesson at the end of, you know, you can trust your own voice. You can find that own voice, whatever it looks like, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Was that the Can you talk about like that lesson, that message, that I guess hope, I guess, for the book of what you hoped readers would walk away from with that?
Yeah. I A lot of it was built from kind of everything I was going through at the time of making it. Like a lot of people and a lot of queer people in general during the pandemic was a big time to like kind of, you're stuck alone with your thoughts. You might as well figure out who you
Yeah.
are. Um,
Yes, that's
so it was a lot of like me coming to terms with my identity as a non-binary person and just as a queer person in general and um, you know, trying to find myself uh outside of anybody else in order to find my community, if that makes sense. Like I didn't want to be because growing up, you in order to fit in and stuff, you emulate what you see around you, and like
yeah.
you know, it's hard to fully be yourself when you're so worried about what other people are going to say. And um, in that time, and before that, when I was in school, like I found that the best thing in order, like the best people that I attracted were the ones that I attracted when I was just being myself. And the ones that like I,
Yeah.
am the closest with. That's my community, is like the people who like I don't need to worry about like, you know,
Yeah.
how what I'm saying or like what I like or whatever. It's you know, or like people who make me want to be the best version of myself. Um, so it stems from that. I don't think every kid from 3 to 5 is gonna be like, wow, this is a really great metaphor for gender identity. I'm not in the broadest sense, like it's more just about like
Yeah.
community and finding yourself and finding like who you are and being and like having who you are be the thing that gravitates people towards you. Um and yeah, and also just like what your part is in a community, like everyone's like contribution to their community or society or whatever is different in ways, and um like I'm realizing what I want to do with my work, um though it's not like, you know, super um like what's the word would be, like it's not super like bold activism or anything. Like I'm not doing anything that's like super um like noteworthy in terms of that. I want to create nice spaces for everybody to come in and be able to like see themselves in my books. And
Yeah.
um I I know this about myself, and I want to create like a world that I would like to live in, and hopefully everyone will join me.
Yes.
So
Well, I want
um
to live in it from page one, and I would challenge you and say that is big. That
yeah,
is bold. That is noteworthy. Maybe
right,
in a quieter way, perhaps, but
yeah.
what a mission. What
But
a books.
I guess bold isn't the right word. I guess like my activism isn't as explicit as people who are like really out there and like
Right.
who I adore and respect. And um mine is like this is just how I'm able to do it. And um yeah, I hope that people appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Well, in a way, you're kind of like Belle and finding the way that you're sharing your voice, you're
Yeah.
sharing your work, your activism in your way. So it's this really nice parallel that I'm figuring out.
Yeah. Weird how that happens.
Yes, isn't it? Isn't it? So I want to go to the illustrations because I mentioned I just loved that first double page spread that made me just want to dive right in. How how do you do it? Are you a sketcher? Do is it pencil first and then it's color? And how do you figure out the colors? And then do you go digital? Like, just tell me all the things about how you actually did that.
So, um, the thing that I kind of realized when I met up with Molly in 2020, and that she kind of pointed out to me, is that I have a better time figuring out a story when I start with a character, um, as opposed to like, oh, I want to make a book that's like about like, you know, about this. It's better when I just like have a character in mind, I understand who they are, and I let their story happen, and then whatever I'm feeling is gonna like it's gonna come out at some point in there, like when I in that story. So anyway, um, so yeah, I first designed all the characters. A lot of them are a lot of them, yeah, a lot of them are like evolved versions of characters that are in the background of my thesis book. Um, and that book was like a kind of a similar thing where it's like a parade that like builds up after page and after page. Um, and so I used a lot of like similar characters from that. Um, kind of they, I mean, it was over the span of I graduated in 2017. It's been over the span of like 7 years, so so they've come a long way. But I started with them, and then it was a lot of like designing the town and her apartment, like I said, and figuring out where I wanted her to go. Um, like at first, like she was gonna go down into like the forest and like go to like the lake and like all this stuff. And um, but and so yeah, once like you have to fit it into this many pages, or like the
Yeah.
story is gonna make the most sense and be the most succinct in this way, like then it kind of makes you kill your darlings a bit. Um, so uh, so yeah, it was a lot of designing the assets first, basically the assets. Doing a lot of like character development and visual development, and then going into sketching the pages after obviously writing the thing and figuring out what goes in each one. Um,
You know,
and
just that little
yeah, you know,
thing.
the important thing. Yeah. I'm so bad because like I started out as an illustrator. I always like it always makes it seem like the writing is secondary to me, but it's not. Like it's very much equal importance.
Yes.
Um, it's just like the drawing takes a little longer. But uh, yeah. So I did all that first, and then uh, sketch out little thumbnails of each spread. Um, and then make them bigger and uh figure out what works, uh what looks the best, what will fit type, what what looks best like as a whole. Like I try to look at all my thumbnails in a row for the book, um
Okay.
especially for like a color story. This book has a lot of kind of the same palette throughout, but I tried to vary it up in terms of like how much negative space there was in places, like making sure there was a good balance between vignettes and like full bleed spreads.
Mhm.
um so yeah, it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of uh remembering to zoom out and make sure everything's looking good as a whole. um and yeah, the other thing too, like I knew the book was coming out in the summer, and I figured the vibe was more summery, and I guess I my color palette was a little bit more um you know uh reflective of that. And also, I don't know, I always gravitate to warm colors. I think we all do.
Mm.
um Doing colder pieces is a lot tougher, and I don't envy anybody who does that. But yeah, I just am naturally drawn to that. Actually, the colors, like I usually start because I have a little bit of a background in like screen printing, and like my work throughout school, a lot of it was like kind of emulating that, was like colors layering on top of colors to make other ones. And that ended up being my process for this as well, but just in a more like really intense way, where like I have a layer that's like all cool colors and a layer that's all warm colors, and then my lines, and they're all multiplied on top of each other. So
Oh,
it's like really crazy. And then doing that with all those crowd scenes was like not
a
fun. So
lot. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a lot. I love knowing that though. I love knowing that process, that kind of backstory. So what is your medium? Like what are you actually using for the color?
I did everything in Procreate this round. I
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's crazy. It's gorgeous. Okay,
Thanks.
that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm hoping to not do that again. I really love working in Procreate. It worked really well. I was running into so much trouble um because I had so many crowd scenes. So like I kind of had to work digitally, because like if I was
Yeah.
getting notes from my editor and the designer that were like, "Hey, move this person," I'm like, "Okay, well, I have to move everybody, or I have to redraw this entire crowd." Um, so I had to work that way. I'm kind of hoping this next book I'm able to not do that, and I'm able to like kind of inject a little bit more traditional stuff into it, because that would just, I don't know, help my brain, I think. um, but yeah, no, it worked out really well. I used this brush set called Vivi brushes. It's by this one illustrator whose name I'm blanking on, but it's VIVI brushes. Um, and I use that basically for the whole book. She makes really amazing like pencil brushes and stuff, and I love working color pencil, um, and gouache specifically when I'm working physically. So or traditionally rather. Um, so yeah, anything that like tries to emulate that. I think it's really important when you're working digitally that you kind of have a basis in working with physical media, especially if you're trying to emulate physical media. It
Yeah.
just helps you like understand how colors work better together, and like especially with like contrast. Uh like it's really nice when you're working digitally, because you're able to like just put a black and white layer on top of everything and see like is this character just getting lost in like gray muck or not? Or like is this scene like a lot of mine has a lot of like my book has a lot of like foreground, middle ground, background. So I just want to make sure like that stuff is spaced out right, contrast wise, color wise. So yeah, because of all those moving parts, working digitally was like kind
Yeah.
of the only thing that I could really do in my head at least.
I
Um,
love
if,
knowing that. I love that. I am a big fan. I'm like I said, I probably should stop saying that I'm not artistic, but I love hand
you
lettering.
are.
I love like, the bubble letters and making quotes and putting borders. And so I
Yeah.
actually purchased a Procreate course to
Oh,
show
nice.
me how to do that. So the fact that you just said this entire book is made in Procreate, I'm like, okay, I got to dig back through those bazillions of emails since I bought that course and get jazzed up about that again.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, they're amazing, especially with like unfortunately Adobe's just getting so like greedy with their pricing and stuff like that. I mean, unfortunately also Adobe is so like necessary. Like even though I work in Procreate, I still have to export everything
Right.
to Adobe to make sure everything looks good and like obviously that's what my designer uses and stuff. So um but being able to like I don't know, especially for younger artists, if they just want to try digital medium out, it's great. You don't
Yeah.
have to sign up for like an entire Creative Cloud package. But
Yeah.
um, I sound like I'm an ad for Procreate, but I kind of am. The only frustrating thing with it, though, not the to completely take a pivot from being an ad for Procreate, the only frustrating thing is sizing things down sometimes like can blur everything.
Uh,
Uh, so that's why a lot of the times when I was doing crowd scenes, I'd have to redraw them, even if I just had to size someone down. Whereas in Photoshop doesn't really do that. So I don't know what that is. Hopefully they fix it. Great.
right.
But
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Well, I can see why that would be an issue knowing the scenes in your book because there is a lot going on that I imagine you
Yeah.
didn't play around with
Yeah.
to fit it all on there.
I've heard a lot of people too, like who do textiles and stuff, like say that Procreate is kind of tough because it has like a halo around the lines. For some reason when you export it. So that's just a note for anybody who like
For all
is
of us who
interested in
are going
that
to
sort of
start
thing.
learning Procreate now that we know
Just
about
be
it.
careful.
Yeah. Oh, well, I love hearing you talk about it. One of the classes I teach at my university is children's literature, surprise, surprise. And we spend a couple of weeks on picture books where we really geek out on like Sipes terms. We talk about double spreads and fold plates. So I love just
Love
listening. I'm
it.
like, ooh, that brush. Ooh, now I can mention this brush to my students. So I feel like I've gotten a little education in that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a useless well of that.
So you mentioned already another book, another project, something you're working on.
Yeah.
What can you tease us a little bit about what might be coming?
Sure. Not a book with a bunch of crowd scenes again, I'll tell you that. But no, so basically I'm working on a book. Right now it's about a kid who's moving away and his friends want to throw him like the best day ever and everything goes wrong.
Oh,
Um, and it's going to be a lot about, you know, enjoying the journey and like being okay with like expectations changing and but also just it's going to be about like having friends and like how nice that is and like
yeah.
um yeah i I don't know, it's definitely still in the works, even story wise, so I'm wondering where it'll go, but I'm really excited about it. And yeah, it's a bunch of animal characters this time. I don't have a ton of humans in the world yet. I might put them in, but it's mostly focused on the four friends, so like I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about like a huge background crowd. But we'll see. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, it sounds like it will have, Belle vibes in terms
definitely.
of like the meaning and the message and that kind of feel goodness behind it,
Right.
which will be wonderful.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you.
yay.
Yeah,
So I will
it feels like the small town book. This is like the big city book, but like weirdly not the one with all the crowds. So I don't know. Anyway.
Well, everybody needs, a little bit of everything. So you've got
Yeah,
both things covered here.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on today to talk about the day Belle found her sound, to talk about the story, to let me geek out on the whole process and the way that you pull it together.
Absolutely.
I
Thank you
I
for
loved
having me.
it. Yeah, it was just it's beautiful. Listeners, I hope I conveyed that you need to see it. You need to see the colors, you need to see those crowd scenes that paid off in terms
Thank
of the
you.
feeling that they evoke. This is a book that I can imagine librarians, educators, caregivers reading, and kids like leaning, the physical lean,
I
when
love
you
it.
just want to get into that book.
Especially like
This
when
book is that.
kids do that, it's like you really feel like you won.
Yes.
Um, my I've been babysitting my cousin's kids, and she has a 7 month old now and a 3 and a 5 year old, and just like hanging out with them has just been like so great. Just to even like know, just to be more well because I don't have kids yet. But just to be more well acquainted with like, oh, this is how kids like their brains are crazy. They go from like they jump from one thing to the other like so quick, and it's so funny. Um, so when they do like really get sucked into something, it's like, all right, cool. Like I get you now. Like I see
Yes.
you.
Yes.
So if that happens with my work, then I'm just like over the moon.
It will. This adult did. Okay,
Love
so
it.
this
Love it.
adult did. The kids definitely will. I think they'll lean in to get, closer to the story that they see, but then that beautiful message that'll just, wash over them. It's gorgeous. I'm so grateful that I get to be part of your launch week, your book birthday, all of the things. I know it'll be a hit. It's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. Where can listeners, potential readers find you online? Website, social media? Where do you
Sure.
want to send us?
My portfolio site, which is kind of like under construction at the moment, is LizzyO'Donnell.com, which is easy enough. And then my Instagram is at DizzyPunk, DizzyPunk. It's a nickname my grandpa had for me, and I refuse to get rid of the
Oh,
username.
so sweet.
Much to my agent's dismay, I'm not gotten rid of it. Sorry, Molly.
But once people know the story behind it,
Yeah.
then it's endearing.
Yeah,
I
but
love it.
I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah,
I
I
told my
know.
mom about that, and she was like, "Well, then maybe you really should get rid of it." I was like, "Who's your dad? Why did you say
I won't keep it. I won't keep it.
that?" She's just also my agent too. She's like on the side.
Yeah. Moms have a good way of doing that.
Definitely.
Well, I will put links to all of those things, your website, which I did get sucked into with all those. You have beautiful illustrations on there. I'll put links to your social media handle as well as links to the book so that they can just
Yeah,
easily click and find it and grab it. It's
yeah.
awesome.
It's up
Thank
for
you.
pre-order now, but when this comes out, it'll be out physically
Yeah,
tomorrow. This is
tomorrow.
crazy.
Congratulations. I just
Thank you so
enjoy every
much.
second of it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And
And thank
listeners,
you for gassing me up. This is so nice.
oh, that's my favorite thing to do for authors. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to this bonus episode of the KidLit Love podcast, and we'll see you in the regularly scheduled episode later this week. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.